This session is going to look at how to create a pop-up menu. This is our York Castle Museum demonstration app, and this is where we've been looking at creating different forms of navigation and incorporating a map in previous tutorials. This tutorial will show you how to create a standard pop-up menu which will slide in from one side of the artboard and allow you to navigate between pages. Now in this app it's somewhat redundant in that we already have navigation buttons on the home page, and we can use the navigation options at the bottom of each of the other pages. Just for the purposes of showing you how a pop-up menu works though, we will incorporate one in here. And what I'm going to do is create a little menu icon up at the top, and then use another artboard to design how the menu is going to look. So let's start by creating a menu artboard. I'm just going to put it up here for now. So I'm just going to drag it into position up there. It doesn't necessarily need to be positioned, but I am going to call it menu, just so I know where it's going to be. That menu is going to consist of a rectangle, which is going to cover probably about 2/3 of the screen horizontally. So let's just drag that out there using the snap tools to get it to the right size on the artboard. It doesn't need a border, but I am going to give it a sort of charcoaly color there. Now, as part of the design of this, let's create a heading, and I'm just going to call it navigation for now. Let's just make that slightly bigger, so it's up to 28 or so. And underneath, I'm going to create a series of menu options. So let's go home, and let's just take that down to 22 in size. In between each of the options, I'm just going to put a straight line, just which helps a little bit with distinguishing those different menu links there. So now I'm going to highlight these two. You can see them highlighted in the layers panel. I'm just going to press Ctrl G to group those. So that is now one object. And let's call that menu link. Oops. I'm going to copy and paste that now. I'm going to drag it out, and you can see, let's just give it a sort of accurate spacing. And Adobe XD will help us by replicating that spacing underneath. So going down, I can see that we have a home page, but we have the viewer map, the shops, and interesting objects as our options. The shops and interesting objects we haven't created pages for yet, but obviously viewer map we have. So I'm just going to double click into here and recreate our menu options there. Okay, so now we have a rough menu. What we need to do is link it to the pages down here so that we can click something. In the map page here, I'm going to create what's known as a hamburger icon, which is those three little lines which normally denotes a menu. Now I could go and get a pre-made icon for this, but actually it's pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to create my own here. I'm going to use the rectangle tool. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to create a box here. It doesn't need a border, but I am going to give it a sort of a grey fill colour. Now you can see with the bounding boxes here, you can use the tabs at the side to drag these out and make them different sizes. We can also use these small circles inside the bounding box to round those corners off. So I'm going to grab that and then I'm going to pull it inwards, and you can see those corners are beginning to round off. I'm going to pull it all the way in so we have that sort of circular edge. Then I'm going to copy that, I'm going to drag it out below, and a third time. So if I select all of those, press Ctrl G, you can see them highlighted in the layers panel there. They're now going to be called menu icon, and that's my menu icon there. I can drag that wherever I need it. Okay, so what I want that menu icon to do when clicked is trigger this menu to appear. Now, I can use the prototype tool, which, as we saw before, allows us to link between pages to create that link. Once I click on prototype, you'll see that the thing that I have highlighted will have this little blue pull-out tag that I can drag, and I'm just going to drag it to the menu. The form of interaction will be displayed in that right-hand panel. So the trigger is just a tap, which is what we want. That's absolutely fine. Then we want to look at the different types of transition that we want underneath there. So we know that the destination is menu, that's fine, and it's just going to be a dissolve, which is kind of a fade in. Let's just see how that looks in our preview. Okay, so we can see that our menu icon is there. If I click it, what happens is that our menu will appear over the top. Now, that's okay, but what I want to show is that this has appeared over that page. Essentially what this has done at the moment is link us to another page, which is kind of not really what I want. It's taking us away. Instead then, what I'm going to do is create an overlay. In the type of action, we currently have transition. If I drop this down, we have all these different options for what that particular button tap is going to do. I'm going to choose overlay here. When I click overlay, you can see that this is going to be put into place by this green box showing where that overlay is going to be on that particular page. So unlike transition, overlay keeps you on the same artboard, and that's great because we just want our menu to appear but also then disappear. So overlay, our destination is menu, which is correct. The animation that we're going to use is not going to be dissolve, we're going to slide it. Now I'm going to have it sliding from the left to the right, so slide right. And let's just click that. We can choose different easing, which means it kind of slows down at the start or at the end. Ease out is kind of, it slows down at the end, which is kind of what I want. And the duration is 0.3 seconds. You can play around with these settings just to get the animation down to exactly what you want. But let's preview this. Okay, when I click my icon now, it's going to fly in from that side. That's exactly what I want. If I click outside it, then that menu is going to disappear again. It's going to play that animation in reverse, which is, again, exactly what I want. Now, when I click that, it still feels as though this kind of background material is still kind of to the fore. I want to somehow fade that out a little bit. So on this pane in the menu artboard here, I'm going to create a little faded background just so it looks as though that menu is now at the fore of that particular artboard. So what I'm going to do is create a faded background to this menu. I'm going to do this by going back to the Design tab and using the rectangle. And on this menu button here, so I'm just going to click off that, I'm going to draw a rectangle just in this area to the right of the menu. I'm going to untick border and I'm going to give it a fill of a sort of light greyish, And I'm going to take this down to 70% or thereabouts in terms of transparency. So when I do that, what we'll be able to see is that I have the main menu on the left-hand side, and then we have a transparent piece of rectangle to the right-hand side. Okay, so in terms of the prototype, I'm going to just click this and then choose the tap trigger, and instead of transition, I'm just going to go previous artboard. Now the previous artboard just takes us back to what the original state was. So that means that when that little grey area is clicked, it will just simply hide the menu. I'm just going to rename that faded background. I'm just going to drop it down to the back just in case. Everything else should be fairly clear there. I can actually see that on that artboard we do already have a little back to previous. Now, for now, I'm just going to delete that by clicking the delete key because we've already got our back thing with the faded menu there. Okay, right, let's just see if that works as it should. So I'm going to preview the map page. When I click the menu icon, you can see now that we have a little faded background, which kind of then pushes that content, that page content, to the back, and the menu is now the focus. You can't actually click any of these menu options yet, so let's go back to the menu, and in the prototype, because I've created each one of these as its own menu link button there, I now have the option to have that as a prototype link. So with the home button, I know that that's just going to be dragged down to the home page. And with the viewer map button, let's drag that across to the map page. We obviously don't have the shops and the interesting objects pages yet. So now let's just go back to the map page and preview that. Clicking there will now take us just home. So that's how to create a pop-up menu. Obviously, you guys will have different requirements in terms of menu items and other things that you might want to get in that sort of pop-up thing. That principle will also work for pop-up objects, for maps and other things within your project. So do use those principles just to create other forms of overlay or pop-up materials.